I want to go now to Tess Newton Cain, who is the project lead for the Pacific Hub at Griffith Asia Institute. Tess, good morning to you. Welcome to News Breakfast. Can you put this in context? Why the concerns from Australia and US, and are they well heeded?
Good morning, Lisa. Well, regional security is a shared challenge. It's a shared concern for all partners, of which Solomon Islands and Australia are certainly, the most closely involved. But obviously, the US has a long-standing interest in the security of the region as well. So it's not surprising that there are concerns. It's not surprising that people want to express those concerns. I think in terms of the relationship between Solomon Islands and Australia, it's important that we realise that this is a particular moment. It's a significant juncture in that relationship. But this is a long-standing relationship, and it's important that Australia demonstrates its ability to maintain long-standing relationships, even at times where they feel they may be not going as smoothly as they might like.
Yes, well, I think it was Maurice Payne who said it was up to the Pacific family, or it was the Pacific family that was best placed to look after others in the Pacific when it came to security needs. But the Solomon Islands, despite the officials who arrived to try and convince them otherwise, decided that this was the road they wanted to go down. Where does it go now? You say Australia still needs to continue supporting this relationship, but what happens next?
Well, I think the short answer to that is we don't know. We still don't know exactly the detail of what this security agreement entails. What we've heard from Prime Minister Sogavare is that he sees this as part of a diversification of relationships for his country, and he's looking at pursuing agreements with Fiji and Papua New Guinea, who are also members of the Pacific family. I think it's important for the Australian public to remember that Sogavare has said quite clearly that Australia remains the partner of choice for Solomon Islands. He's not talking about changing that arrangement. So that, Australia already has that agreement in place, a security treaty. So there's a range of things going on. It's quite a complex environment. I think what I would hope would happen next is that people would be able to maintain channels of communication. Sogavare has met with Australian officials. I understand that he plans to meet with American officials when they arrive. So I think that's a good sign that that door is still open and that he is able to meet with those people and hear from them. I think it's also really important that we focus on what is the primary concern for security in Solomon Islands, and that is the security of Solomon Islands people. They're dealing with a number of challenges, including a resurgence of COVID infections, which are overwhelming quite fragile health systems. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that Solomon Islands is scheduled to have elections next year. So, things are still quite fluid in terms of political activity and, different voices in Solomon Islands expressing how they feel about this. I think, Australia and US are concerned about a lack of transparency. I don't think they're as concerned as the people of Solomon Islands are, because they're certainly very concerned about a lack of consultation. So I think it's still a very fluid situation, and I think it's important that everybody maintains their composure and sees this as an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, well, we saw the leak of the draft text about 3 weeks ago, I think, and you're talking about how they feel in the Solomon Islands, but everything we've seen from China would perhaps indicate that it has different views about how it wants to approach this security agreement. What do you think China is looking for?
Well, I'm not a China expert. China has been pursuing a range of relationships in the Pacific, including with Solomon Islands. The relationship with Solomon Islands is quite a new one, and it's developed very quickly. China has relationships that touch on security and law enforcement issues with other Pacific Island countries. But this agreement, assuming it is pretty much what we saw leaked a few weeks ago, is a marked departure in terms of the breadth of the agreement and the content of the agreement. So that's obviously a significant development in how China is pursuing these relationships. I don't think we're at a point to know what that means. I don't think we can say there will be a base in Solomon Islands or when that will happen, if at all. I don't think it necessarily means that China is going to be looking to develop the same relationships with other Pacific Island countries. That may happen, that may not happen. But I think in terms of Australia's policy community, the real focus needs to be on the Australian relationship with Solomon Islands. I think there's a degree of scepticism in the region that the attention that countries like Solomon Islands and Vanuatu are receiving is because of a reaction to China. And I think it's really important that Australian policymakers do as much as they can to reassure the people of Solomon Islands that it's the relationship with them that is front of mind.
Tess Newton Cain from Griffith University, great to get your insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.